Welcome back to TS Classic, where today, yet another Caledonia Works product is up for review. This time, our subject is the somewhat obscure 956 Class 460, one of the final locomotive designs ever built by the Caledonian Railway. And as usual, I'm not sponsored by Caledonia Works. I bought the 956 with my own money. Chris Wilson goes into a lot of detail on this class's history in the manual, but for the purposes of this video, I'll just do a brief overview of said history. In contrast to their imposing size, the 956 class wasn't numerous at all, with only 4 examples built in 1921 to the design of William Pickersgill, and numbered 956, 957, 958, and 959. The engines were intended to haul heavy trains on the West Coast Main Line, after Pickersgill's first 460, the 60 class, didn't perform too well. The 956s were unusual in being equipped with 3 cylinders, but what was even weirder was the presence of Walshart's valve gear for the outside cylinders, and Stephenson valve gear for the inside cylinder. Despite their imposing appearance, the 956s were plagued with mechanical issues throughout their lives. Their small ash pan resulted in drafting problems, but the main problems came from the unusual valve gear arrangement. Even after replacing the original cast iron valve gear spindles with steel ones, the 956's performance remained poor. All 4 of these locomotives became part of the London, Midland and Scottish Railways fleet upon the grouping in 1923, but in their early days, the LMS didn't like the 956 class all that much. All 4 of these locomotives were withdrawn from service between August 1931 and January 1936, with none of them surviving into preservation, but the tenders were apparently reused on some 72 and 140 class 440s. Caledonia Works has brought the 72 class to TS, but I haven't got her yet, so she won't appear in this video. As for the 140 class, or Dunalistair 4, the nearest thing we've got to her in the game is the 721 class, otherwise known as Dunalistair 1. The 956 class was released for TS Classic at the end of June 2021. As of early December 2024, she is still available on CW's website for £15, or $32.18 NZD, at full price. Towards the end of November, I got the 956 for 25% off in CW's Black Friday sale, alongside the LNER A4 Pacific and BR Standard 4MT tank. With the discount code applied, the total cost for this lot was $98.63 NZD. But at the time of this video's production, I have no intention of reviewing either the A4 or Standard 4 tank anytime soon. Sorry, Brian and Dominion of New Zealand. We will ignore Brian's confusion so as not to derail the video, so to speak. He should consider himself lucky to be an example of the only BR standard type in Caledonia Works' arsenal. As an aside, the 956 reminds me of the earlier 903 Cardine class, in the sense that they're both 460s with disproportionately large boilers. But to their credit, and in my opinion, they still look a lot better than the London and North Eastern Railway K3 class. Now we'll take a look at the liveries that come with the 956 class. Firstly, there's Caledonian Railway lined blue, then Caledonia Railway photographic grey, pre-1927 LMS Crimson Lake, and post-1927 LMS lined black, which, curiously, doesn't have the burnished smokebox door handles. As stated earlier, the real 956s didn't survive past 1936, which explains the lack of British Railways liveries. The 956 in TS is built on SimNation's Locomotion 1.4 scripting, and the list of features includes, but is not limited to, Performance Mode Pro, fire intensity synchronized with the exhaust beat, a 3D firebox, fully modelled boiler backhead, numerous cab camera views, and animated inside valve gear, although you can barely see it. Other things I noticed were the animated reverser rod, animated rod in the middle of the Westinghouse air pump, tiny jets of sand actually appearing when you press the X key, and lastly, a broom, Bible, and a smoking pipe modelled on the footplate. Suffice to say, I'm impressed by little details like these ones. The 956 class had an unusual exhaust beat of 6 chuffs per wheel rotation, just like the LNER A3 and A4 Pacifics. But according to the manual, instead of a steady 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 beat, the 956 sounded more like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. This was apparently due to the valve gear's erratic behaviour. As for how to drive this thing, instructions are given in the manual, with 2 especially important things to remember being to keep the fire mass between 40 and 45% and the water level between 70 and 90%. Those percentages are visible on the F4 heads-up display, otherwise known as the Fisher-Price toolbar. As is the case with a lot of CW's more recent locomotives, the 956 has a semi-advanced boiler heating system, so you'll need to sit idle and build up the fire for a few minutes before setting off. Sometimes, I actually struggle with keeping up a good head of steam on these newer CW products, so it's always a good idea to read the manual. As for any downsides of the 956 class, I couldn't think of any upon first appraisal, aside from the non-functioning doors over the tender fall plate and lack of scenarios. However, the 956 class does come with quick drive consists, and the requirements for said consists are detailed on the engine's listing at CW's website. I thought I'd test the 956's hill climbing abilities with a freight train, and the wagons were loaded with a comically large delivery of Chairman's custard creams bound for Soma. If I had any say in the matter, I would have loaded the train with chocolate chip biscuits because I don't like anything with custard in it. Don't tell Mr. Chairman I said that. In any case, and in order to get to Soma, the engine had to tackle the climb out of Axley, whose ruling grade is 1 in 57. The route I've been using for most of this video is Dark Railway 1960s, and as for how I got it in the first place, I downloaded it from UK Train Sim around 7 years ago. Essentially, this video is also a plug for Duck DJ Productions, who was kind enough to mention me in a recent livestream. I consider that a great honour, seeing as I've been watching his videos for the better part of 8 years now. As you saw earlier, I started the test run at Gallon Junction, but had the idea to stop at Axley to build up steam. But even though I was keeping the coal and water levels at what was advised in the manual, 956 still took a long time to build up steam during a stop at Axley, and she absolutely bled boiler pressure to the point where she stalled only 0.4 miles from the start of Soma Yard. I realised that I was driving the engine wrong, and thought that I should go back down to Axley, swap for a different train, and try another run at the hill with a lighter load. Dare say that, if I tested this engine on Upway Bank, she would just be crawling again instead of running up that hill. For her second attempt at the Soma branch, 956 was given 4 BR Mark I coaches instead of a freight train. These are the Armstrong Powerhouse Mark I coaches, and if I recall correctly, they're scripted to be heavier than the old Kuju/RSC Mark Is. Once again, the locomotive left Axley with a full head of steam, but even with this shorter train, she still struggled to go any faster than 28 miles per hour on the grade, let alone get anywhere near the speed limit of 50. But on the plus side, she at least made it to Soma this time, only to find that the quarry staff were enraged over not getting their custard creams. They were too distracted by their anger to explain what L150 was doing there. Next, I went over to the Western Lines of Scotland route to take locomotive number 956 on a test run from Stranraer town to Newton Stewart, a distance of 23.5 miles. Given how poorly 956 did on the Soma branch, especially on her first attempt, I wasn't going to take a chance on the Castle Douglas to Newton Stewart section. As you can see, I gave 956 some British Rail Mark II F coaches, and made sure that all but one of them had the numbers of Mark IIs that, in real life, got a new lease of life after being exported to New Zealand, of all places. For example, the real FO coach number 3430 is now equipped with a diesel generator set, designated as SEG 3430 and used on the Wellington to Masterton service, while TSO coach number 6182 was initially rebuilt as an SD cab car for Auckland commuter service, and is now an SRG generator coach on KiwiRail's Capital Connection train. This is partially a shameless plug for my upcoming video on the Mark II coaches and their new lives in New Zealand. I wouldn't say that Stranraer town to Newton Stewart is the most difficult section of the Port Road, but it's certainly not completely flat either. In any case, I started this run without expecting to take the engine and push it to the limit. The steepest grade on this section is 1 in 63, but most of the time, it's between 1 in 150 and 1 in 83. As for how the locomotive performed on this run, well, despite me revisiting the manual for a refresher on how to drive this thing properly, she didn't do too well. While I did get her up to around 52 miles per hour between Castle Kennedy and Dunraget, the boiler pressure went down like a stone on the inclines past Dunraget. I ended up having to stop for a blow-up on the long 1 in 90 climb out of Glenluce, and sat idle for 21 minutes until the ruddy thing had enough steam to get moving again. Even with the blower and dampers on, the locomotive still took a very long time to build up steam. And this blasted thing ended up testing my patience to the point where I wondered if I should just give up before getting to Kirkowen, let alone Newton Stewart. In the end, I didn't give up, and after I got 956 moving again, I saw the grade briefly increase to 1 in 63 before the top of the hill. Thankfully, 956 didn't stall a second time, and once over the hill, it was a much easier run for the rest of the journey to Kirkowen and Newton Stewart. I dare say Gary the steam engine would not have been happy at all with how long he had to wait in the loop with his tankers. In the end, it took me 74 minutes to complete the run from Stranraer town to Newton Stewart, and the highest speed I could get up to with 956 was only around 52 miles per hour. I can only imagine how much time I would have sat idle just raising steam if I tried the Newton Stewart to Castle Douglas section. At the end of the day, I still like the Caledonian Railway 956 class for her impressive appearance and features, but she is a right pig to drive, and that lets the experience down. I dare say you'll need to be very patient with this thing if you pick her up for yourself, especially if my experience of driving 956 on the dark railway and Port Road are anything to go by. For the time being, I give the 956 class a 6.8 out of 10.